Hello, my name is Devin Rodriguez, and this is my presentation on Artifact 6. First, I will address Standard 3.1, ISTE Criterion 8, Implement learning experiences for students to be empathetic and socially responsible. This artifact provides evidence of how I provide opportunities for my learners to demonstrate social responsibility and empathy. To do so, I created a mini lesson to guide my Spanish language learners in developing socially responsible responses and empathetic contributions in an online community in and out of my classroom. The lesson began with my students watching a short music video called Building Empathy for Kids on YouTube. Then I divided the class into small groups, giving each group a scenario that required them to come up with ways to show empathy in a social responsible manner. I asked students to discuss among themselves what comments can other people make face-to-face or on a social interaction online that makes them feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. Then I asked students to write down different ways to make those comments become positive comments. Students wrote a short list of the positive comments they discussed. Even though I didn't take pictures of the comments my students wrote on the board, I do have a couple of other work samples. On the first work sample, there is a picture of my students working in small groups to come up with positive comments for their social media posts. On the second work sample, we can see a screenshot of the YouTube page of the video I showed my students called Building Empathy for Kids on YouTube. To finish the lesson, and after students had completed the scenarios, they used the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation, being a curriculum website. And then they discussed ways that they can provide affirmative feedback or constructive criticism when they do not agree with what is being said or being said about them. As I reflect on my experiences after implementing this mini lesson, I came to the conclusion that my students do not realize the power of their voices on social media, and teaching them about caring about the feelings of others while posting is a topic I will continue to bring and share with my students in future opportunities. Now I will address Standard 3.3, ISTE Criterion 10. Mentor students in safe, ethical, and legal use, including intellectual property. To meet this standard, I created mini lessons for my Spanish language learners to teach students to recognize the difference between submitting original work versus work that has been plagiarized. Here is a sample of the lesson that I created for my students. They were tasked with using the internet to investigate a Spanish-speaking important figure or country. Students will create a presentation of the Spanish-speaking figure or organization of their choosing. As students research the Spanish-speaking country or figure, I showed them where to find citation sites to help them with their research on the web. Students then cited their sources from their investigation at the end of their presentations. This artifact provides evidence of how my learners practice ethical, legal, and safe use of intellectual property. This artifact shows the citation one of my students used at the end of her research project presentation. Reflecting on my experiences after implementing this mini lesson, as an educator, I believe students should recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world. and that they act and model digital citizenship in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. This lesson provided my students an opportunity to learn and practice proper citation of their research project to stay in line with the legal and ethical aspects of the standards. As a digital citizenship educator, next time I implement a lesson on preventing plagiarism in the classroom, I will provide my students with a wider range of resources or books on citing their work prior to completing the lesson. The last standard I will be addressing is Standard 3.4, ISTE Criterion 11, Model Responsible Use, including protection of digital identity and personal data. My artifact specifically showcases the lesson plan I created to provide my students with learning experiences on how to keep their digital identities and their personal data safe. On this mini lesson titled Cell Phone Use in the Classroom, I told my students I would show them an example of how to protect someone's digital identity. I asked a student to FaceTime another student in the class that was not present that day. While the student was on the phone video chatting, I approached the other group members to get their reaction on their classmate, that he was having a conversation aloud with the other student and even talking and discussing topics that were not related to the actual assignment. I asked the students to make suggestions on how that other student could have handled the situation better and protecting the student that was on the other side of the camera while they were conducting the meeting connected digitally. Even though I didn't have screenshots while implementing this lesson, I discussed with my students how important it is to protect our digital identities. Then I opened the floor for students to share ways their digital identities could affect them in their daily lives, not only at our school. While implementing this lesson, my first thought was that my students would think that it was silly to even have a lesson on this. As the lesson progressed, my students were able to recognize the value of what we were doing and became engaged, which made me recognize the positive impact of the lesson. Now I will share my reflection on this lesson. I believe that I must teach my students to cultivate and manage their digital identity and reputation, and to make them aware of the permanence of their actions in the digital world. As a digital citizenship educator, the next time I implement this lesson of the use of cell phones in the classroom, I will encourage my students to come up with ideas for the mini lessons based on their own knowledge of digital citizenship and personal experiences as they use their cell phones in and out of the school, whether they are conducting research, talking to their friends, or just FaceTiming or texting. Thank you for watching my presentation.